Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Whining On. Matt Valentine, the Incorrigible Rogue here, and today I'm here with Steve Rawlings. Steve, please say a little bit about yourself.
Evening, I'm Steve Rawlings. I'm a performer. I've been one since 1984, around about then. Started as a street performer, then started doing the clubs, the touring, a little bit of TV, and I've been going ever since, really. Great life, except for now, obviously. I'm currently unemployed. Sorry?
It's a little bit difficult now, isn't it? Every performer in the world's having to bloody lock up.
Yeah, it's the weird thing is there's no end date to it. If I said to you, okay, like we'll have 6 months and then off you go and you're back to work, you know, okay, you get your head around that and then yeah, you prepare for it, you're ready, and you've got in your head that you can go back then and it's all fine. You just enjoy your time. But when there's no end date, I'm finding that quite weird.
Yeah, I can imagine. Are you training? Are you trying to keep your skills tight, so to speak?
I am. I'm working. I'm really keen on the ball and mouse stick stuff at the moment. Ball and mouse stick, glass and mouse stick, anything mouse stick. And
what's
that's mouse stick, just literally a stick with a sort of a bit that goes in your mouth. You bite down on.
Mouth stick. Sorry, I thought you said mouth stick. I thought it was a stick with a mouse.
Oh no, like that. Mouse stick is good. We should try that.
Yeah, definitely. So would this be the kind of thing you see a lot of time? You'll see African chaps come in who've worked kind of acrobatic routines, and this will be an element of that routine. They'll have pans and balance stuff on the stick with the ball or something like this.
Stuff like that, yeah. It's old style. My people like Michael Chiric or Ernesto Montego, Francis Brun typey thing, where I got into it. The problem was I was looking for something new to get into, because obviously you do the same thing every day and you can get a little bit bored, a little bit jaded. Thought it'd be nice to have a new prop. I was watching a video of Michael Chiric doing it and thought, it's easier than it looks there. What a mistake that was. Jesus, it's so damn difficult. But I'm hooked. I love it. Yeah. It's
you do
just not easy. Sorry?
You do chin balancing.
Yeah, I do a lot of balancing, yeah.
So that must have led into making it easier to do the stick, because surely it's the same pivot point.
Different balance point and a different set of movements, but yeah, I think if you're used to balancing, then you're used to balancing, and you're better at it. But boy, some of the moves I still haven't. It's been 4 or 5 years now, and I've just about got a routine I'm fairly happy to perform. So that I'll tell you, yeah. But nothing like jugglers for obsession, right?
You know it, mate. You know it. So why be a performer? Why do this?
I didn't set out to be one. I started, left school, nothing. Went through probably about 20, 30 jobs that I didn't like. Backup job was always lifeguard. I go and do that for a while.
Really sorry to ask this, mate, but what year was it that you left school?
78, I think.
Okay. Cool. So we're looking at 78, 79. You're wandering around looking for jobs.
Yeah, I went straight into a job at a horticultural centre, which basically no one worked really, as far as I could see. Got bored with that. Left. Parents weren't happy about it. Wanted me to get a job straight away, so I ended up filling the shelves at B-Jam's freezer food store.
All right. Fair enough. I'd say it wasn't the most
so basically I went from a bunch of crap jobs to another bunch of crap jobs. Milkman, security guard, you name it. I'd sort of give it a go. Didn't fit anywhere. Even joined the army for about 9 weeks. Didn't like that very much. But just because I just didn't like it. I just didn't know what else to do. And I filled out the form for Butlins and the army at the same time, like you do. And so unfortunately the army came back a bit quicker than Butlins did.
So they let you leave though, because I thought you have to sign in for 3 years.
You do. I think I'd signed for 9 because I got more money if I actually made it out the far end. But between I think it's 8th and 12th week of training, you can ask to walk away. And on paper, that sounds quite easy, but they don't make it easy. And probably rightly so, because they spent a few bob training here. So I'd literally go up and see the sergeant and said, I'd like to leave if you don't mind. And they'd go, on your way, Rawlings. And I'd go, all right then. And after like the 9th week, you still haven't got any further in leaving. So I was starting to panic a bit. So then you go see the chaplain, and the chaplain talks to the sergeant, who then says, all right, then we'll talk about this a bit more. And eventually I got out. It wasn't for me at all. But 9 weeks running around the Yorkshire moors in midwinter, shouting bananas because we had no ammo. Had to point your gun literally and shout bananas and run at people in a vaguely aggressive sort of a way.
The proud state of the British.
Yeah, it's turning into an Eddie Izzard sketch already, isn't it? But that's literally what we did. Came out of that, didn't fit anywhere, didn't like anything particularly. And the forms for battlings came back round, so I applied for that as a lifeguard. And when I got there, you kind of had to help out. They'd make you do redcoat duties around camp. And they have these horrible kids come around in September that all the kids' redcoats knew were going to be horrible from the Salvation Army. And they all ran away. So they were making all kinds of people come in and help out. And I was one of them, got on a stage kicking and screaming, didn't want to be there. And just went, oh, literally I got on stage and that was it. That was light bulb moment for me. It was just wonderful. Sorry?
Can you explain the sensation? You say light bulb moment, but what did it feel like?
It just felt great. I was on a stage and it just felt great. It was like, this is fun. I like this and I want to do more of it. So when I left Butlins at the end of the season, I got back to London. I didn't have much money, so I couldn't afford the mine workshop. Clown one was full. There was one at Drury Lane, I think.
And so
I couldn't get in that. That was full.
Was the mine workshop kind of very expensive? Was it a different?
The mine was very expensive. I just didn't have any money really. Butlins not being the biggest payers at the time to their lifeguards, probably still not. And then there was a group called Original Mixture, which was Doug Orton, Mitch Mitchelson, and a guy called Andy. And they had their own sort of shows that they were doing, and they did a workshop on Saturday afternoons opposite Kennington Oval, a place called Oval House. I could already juggle, actually. I taught myself to juggle a couple of years back when I was just bored. And I had some sort of idea of what juggling was. Taught myself through and couldn't take it any further and forgot all about it. And then, I got to the workshop and that was it. I just hooked. Juggling's what I wanted to do and be, and away we went from there.
What was the workshop like?
There weren't many people, but they all knew each other. They were all nice.
What was the location?
It was opposite the Oval, opposite Kennington Oval in central London.
And what was the building like? Was it a market? Was it an open space?
No, it was a place with a lot of rooms where workshops could go on and happen. It was one of those sort of community things. So they got a little playhouse thing and some commedia things going on, and juggling was on the Saturday afternoon.
And were these guys all pros? Was it kind of all professional?
It was all a little bit relaxed and hippified, which is not a bad thing. So a few of them, they all seemed to know each other, and it was a very tight little group, and they were very nice. And they sort of did community shows and that kind of thing. Original Mixture with the sort of the professional group there.
And did they hold court if they were the pros? Did they hold court? Did people come to them? Were they kind of the gurus of the group, so to speak?
No, there were no gurus. It was just everyone sort of bubbling around doing juggling and chatting. Alex Dandridge was there actually. Okay, when I very first went there, Alex was there. He couldn't juggle, but he was bowling around on a unicycle really fast.
And so how did you develop after that then?
Sorry?
So how did you develop after that? You've gone to the juggling club, you've seen the juggling, you're obviously improving skills at this club.
Yeah, I got myself 3 clubs and I desperately wanted to perform. And that's when I found out about Covent Garden. So I went up there and I watched, and then I tried to do a show and died on my ass horribly, awfully, horribly badly, to the point where first one I did was not quite so bad. There were me, my missus, and a kid called Tom who we'd roped in as well. And I don't really remember what we did, but we made about £8, which was, judging by my subsequent solo efforts, was not bad actually. I do remember taking the.
Sorry, carry on.
We couldn't really do much at all. I think I had a hat. I think there was a large comb involved. 3 clubs, 3 balls, a little bit of passing, possibly. I think we probably managed passing around someone.
Did you get the idea of building a crowd? Did you have the awareness of the craft at that point?
No, none whatsoever. It was just trying to. We were even doing Chuck Berry jokes. Yeah, it was whatever we thought we could put in a show, really. It was on the inside market at Covent Garden. So there was there were seats, people would sit there. Obviously, they looked at us and didn't stay, but there was some kind of an audience there. Whereas if you go out in the West Piazza, then it's a whole different story. But that was the first show. And after that, I sort of went back, had another thing, did some more practice, came back again. Then I died on my arse on the West Piazza. I literally went out with a big suitcase covered in stickers that I thought looked vaguely like I'd been traveling a lot. Bowler hat, big comb, rings, clubs, balls, I think. Made £3. Did 3 shows, made enough to come back and die again.
Well, if the first show was 3 people, so you earned 3, you earned...
Yeah, totally determined. Yeah. Nothing was going to stop me. I wanted to be a juggler. I wanted to be a performer.
And so were you going home using your spare time, practicing at home? Were you watching the shows? Were you trying to understand the world? How did you get to that point? How did you develop?
I watched and admired everyone that was down there. I mean, do you want me to go through some acts that were there?
Yeah, more than welcome to.
Yeah, I mean, the jugglers that were there would be a guy called John Ballinger doing Jester, Maisie Mendeses, so Dave Spathaki and Chris Adams. You had Tim Batt, who was one of my favourites at the time. He literally had a suitcase, a small suitcase, like a briefcase, and everything fitted in there. He came out, he did a great show, and off he went again. Lynn Thomas was a magician who did a bit of juggling. Who else? John Lee was there. I think he taught a lot, actually, as well. John had a ladder show, I think, at the time. I also saw him do the 5-foot bike through the crowd, Moses thing. Who else was down there? Juggling wise, I think that was about it.
Was there any particular shows that struck you? You thought either I want to do this or I really appreciate what this is?
Tim Batt was my hero of the day. Loved the Mendeses as well. Those are my 2 favourites.
Why was Tim Batt your hero of the day?
I just love what he did. He was a bit quirky. I loved his act. The act was funny. He talked. I just like what he did, I think.
Did you see him as a powerful character?
No, he's an interesting character. He'd start literally just with one hat, just sort of flipping it and rolling it and walking. He had a pair of Union Jack shorts on, an umbrella he used to do devil stick with, I think. And he'd just do some sort of weird character stuff, quirky Englishy hat stuff, until he built a bit of a crowd. And then he did do Appalachian, which at the time I'd never seen. And yeah, still a great trick.
Sorry?
I
said it's still a great trick to this day.
Yeah, it is. It's a wonderful piece of business.
Yeah.
And
what was the experience of young Steve Rawlings? Possibly a little shorter, little more hair, maybe in the Jungian state you are watching these. What was the experience for you? Did you think I want to be that? That's amazing. I need to emulate it. Did you think I could never do this? What was the experience?
I wanted to be them. I think I just wanted to be there and be one of them and be doing what they did desperately, and was prepared to do absolutely whatever to get there.
So do you want to go through how you got there? Because you went to Covent Garden, you became one of them, and some may argue you surpassed that now. And now you're, as I put in your comments,
it's different.
Palladium.
I think the thing with the street is it will burn you out. I've seen some acts that I just thought were wonderful that now probably don't draw a crowd just because they've done too many shows over a period of time, and it's not funny to them anymore. It's not a great act to them anymore.
And the street
it's like when you first have a show and you start rolling it out, it's great and it's funny and it's wonderful. And then over repetition, you start to put stuff in that's maybe shouldn't be in there. It's just there to keep you interested in doing the same act. He says, having done the same act for years. Although I have changed it a bit, but if anyone came and saw it now, they'd just go, oh, yeah, that's Steve's act, I guess. I think, yeah.
So let's focus just for now, because there's lots of really interesting stuff to get into. Just on young Stephen, if you will.
Stephen, when you're bad and your mum gets you.
You're watching the shows. You've said, I want to become this. I want to become a showman. Yes. What's the process?
The process was vast amounts of practice. I'd be there all day long, practicing all day. I'd be watching. I'd be copying a bit, if I'm honest. I'd just be trying to learn to do what they did and how they did it and be better. So I had a few bits of business that I did. I still worked with the missus at the time. We were still doing bits. Then I think the Mendizis quit working. They just stopped working together. And we thought, okay, well, they've quit. We need to make some money. So we pinched a couple of bits off them and we had a couple of bits ourselves. And we did that for a while.
Did you talk to them about it? Was there interaction? Was there a request?
No, they weren't there. I had huge guilt complexes about that for years. I don't think what they were doing was wildly original either, to be honest. But I thought it was.
I mean, you and me both know why we would have guilt complexes about that. But for the sake of the video and for the record, why did you feel guilty?
Because it was their stuff. I mean, the reason for nicking the little bits is obviously admiration, and the fact that they quit doing it. But we all borrow from the people we admire. And then over time, that stuff goes out, hopefully. Well, and your own stuff comes in.
That's one of the difficult journeys through the interviews. I've been trying to really piece together this idea of, where does creativity stop and theft start? And how does influence then play with the idea of, like your people like your Brian Reeds, who are, he is authoritarian when it comes to material. He's an extremist. He's in everything.
I don't know Brian well enough for that, but I know his show is very original, and it was when I first saw it, and when I last saw it. It's Brian.
Yes.
But we're all standing on the shoulders of giants. Nothing's completely original. All you can do is really try and think for yourself and put your own take on it.
So the Mendizis. Oh, sorry. Carry on, please.
A classic of that would be my friend Dominic, the box man. He's a good mate of mine now, lives in Australia. He had this idea where he's inside a box and he does a sort of song and dance routine as the box man. And then for a finale, he puts swords through himself. And he thought it was incredibly original. And then his dad, who was an antiques dealer or something, came out and said, Dominic, you think you're very original, do you? He said, yes, I do. And he went, have a look at this. And he showed him a bronze, sort of one of those etching bronze rubby things.
Yeah.
And it was knights in armor fighting poor people. And the poor people were inside amphoras with their arms and legs sticking out. And the knights were inside coffers. And they were all piercing each other with swords and spears and stuff. Oh, no.
Yeah, and you can imagine that this thing. Yeah, I agree completely. So you've acquired this little bit of material with your partner. You're now using this material. What did you discover when you started using other people's material? Was it discovery or was it just acquisition?
Well, I mean, it didn't make me the most popular bloke at the garden, obviously, because everyone knew it was their stuff, as did I. I just needed to I needed to be there, I needed to stay there, and I needed to make enough to be able to stay there, I think.
Was there a thing of understanding as well? I mean, I know through my history, I've picked up bits from people, and I've probably spent a year working on those bits, and then I seem to, not intentionally, but understand the bits, and then they disappear. And then the mechanics that I've understood from that time live on in the work.
Yeah, I mean, we all tend to borrow what we like, don't we? Whether it's you see something in a person's character that you like, just in your own normal life, you think that's a good thing to do. That's a good thing to be. I'll sort of add that to me. But you have to find your own voice, don't you?
Yes. You need words to do that, though. You need words to say.
Yeah,
so
I think, to be honest, if I was advising anyone who's starting out, it's to do standard stuff and find yourself. You have to start somewhere. You have to go out with something, whatever that is. So if you look on the internet and you see, all right, 3 club juggling, if I pass with somebody else, I can stick someone in the middle. That's a start. It's not a finishing point, but it's a start.
And so how you
can find your own stuff.
Exactly. So how did you develop after that point? And you've done the Mendeezy's work. You're reasonably
we had stuff of our own, and some of the Mendeezy stuff, probably a little bit of Timbat in there as well.
Yeah.
And
so
then I went solo because my missus wasn't particularly into the juggling, and it got cold, and we needed someone to go around with the hat because I wasn't really holding an edge at the time. And then from that, it evolved into just me coming out. And I was doing okay. I had a show that could make money, but not a lot. And it could hold a bit of an edge, but not a lot. And then came the character.
And
that changed everything.
When the character came, is this a sudden thing? Is this overnight? Have you discovered this thing? Did you?
Almost. It was, it came from a bottling hat we were using.
Okay.
It was just a floppy felt hat we were using to collect the money in. And for some reason, I put it on, turned up the front, and started behaving differently. And everyone just went, "Oh, don't be so stupid, take it off." And I annoyed that many people with it, going, "Is this funny? Is this funny? Is this funny? Is this funny? What about this?" They went, "Well, just do it in the show." And I, okay. And I did. And it changed everything.
Was that the other performance? I mean, I really want to get into the formation of the character, but just before we go there, are they the other performers who you were annoying?
I annoyed everybody with it. Just everybody.
The thing I'm trying to get at more than anything is, were the other performers actively workshopping with you? As it sounds like unconsentedly workshopping with you. No,
I was just bowling around with a hat on, going, "What do you think of this?"
But it
wasn't like, "Can you try and work with me on this character?"
Yes. But
it wasn't that at all.
If they give you an answer, there is this inadvertent atmosphere of development. Do you know what I mean? I'm interested in how people develop together without even realizing that little conversation you have with someone, and then you walk off and it gets integrated into the work.
And Covent was always great for people chipping in stuff. Once they decided you're an okay person, you're always hanging out at the back watching people's shows, either with half an eye or fully watching it if you want for a bit. Once people know you a little bit, they'll go, "That little bit there, about you try this," or they'll ease you into an idea that they've thought of that maybe fits you or doesn't fit you, and then leave you either to get on with it or not. And then if you do listen and people see you listen, then they're more likely to chip stuff in, really.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a very beneficial thing. I think pitches that lose that will suffer in the long term. Yeah,
but the hat thing was literally 2 days of me popping it on, going, "What do you think? Is it funny? Is it funny?" And mostly people going, "No," until somebody just went, "I'll just do it in the show. Shut up, go. Don't do it in the show." And I thought, well, nothing to lose, really.
Yeah, completely. And so you've put this hat on, you've moved the hat, and something which I think a lot of actors describe is that getting in costume is one of the biggest steps to forming the character.
Can't really describe what happened. It was just I behaved differently. With the hat on, I behaved differently. And it worked, and it worked quickly. I don't know why, it just worked.
Did you feel different? Was there a sensation of the character?
Yeah, it was a lot more aggressive, I think, than it became. But yeah, I just behaved differently, and that affected the show in every single way.
And so you start playing with that then?
Yeah, and it changed me from someone doing bits of whatever, be it somebody else's stuff or my own, but standardy bits of stuff, to something that stood out, was different from everything else that was down there.
And I suppose once you have a character, all those lines, they get meaning because the lines reflect to the characters. Am I right?
Yeah, it took me a while to learn some stuff doesn't fit. It's like if you have a particular character, you quite often on the street get some little guy who's seen some big guy do a really funny line, and he's put it into his show, and it doesn't work because it only works for big guys.
Yeah,
there's a lot of that. You have to find, if someone's, a couple of times I tried to get people to write for you, and it just doesn't work unless they've sat down and looked at your character and go, what will work for this person, your character, and how you perform. Unless they've done that, there's no point giving a line like, you know, two guys go into a pub, or it just doesn't work. It has to fit the personality and the character that goes with it.
So Melvin was chatting with me earlier, because I chat with Mel about the interviews quite a bit at the moment. Very interested in hearing from a lot of old good friends and shows. And he's put up here a character with a great laugh. And I watched the video and hearing the laugh. And it's not that laugh. It's not your natural laugh, I assume.
No, it's not. And I've no idea where it came from.
And so why did you start doing it? Do you remember where it started? Or
no, it just popped out. And I don't know why. Yeah, it just popped out with the hat. And I've done it to varying degrees ever since. But it does. It seems to fit, and it fitted, and yeah.
And so
I genuinely no idea where that came from. It just popped out as the character popped out. However, sorry, I'll just say this one thing. There's a gig up in Arosa in Switzerland it's literally Field of Dreams in a snow-covered mountain. You literally go up to this mountaintop and you do a show in a tent on the mountain. And the hotel is actually down at the bottom of the mountain where you're staying. And you can take a sled with you. You go up in the cable car and all the rest of it. And then you can literally, it's quite a dangerous route down, but you can sit on your sled and go down. And I did, me and a mate of mine, we were performing together. We shared it. We shared a sled and we went down, and I was absolutely terrified, I have to say, as was he probably. But when we got to the bottom, he said, you know, you're just like your character then.
Well, I suppose the question,
it's obviously in there somewhere. It's just buried a bit deeper.
How much of the character is you? You know, I suppose that's the whole question of that. So it's all you. It's just accentuated. I think all good clowning, all character has to be taking a part of yourself and making it bigger until it becomes something. And so I know that when you put the hat on, you kind of, you said you felt something, the character changed, you began behaving differently.
Mm.
But behaving differently, a show does not make. You know, you've developed work after this. How have you developed this work? How have you integrated the character into everything? More so than just saying it all fitted. Because maybe I'm wrong, but I imagine there's active work that's gone into that.
Well, yeah, I didn't necessarily kick anything out because I had to do something. It was a matter of finding material and then working that with the character rather than just doing a trick, rather than just doing a line. It then became the character doing stuff.
And was it piecemeal? Was it little bit by little bit by little bit?
Yeah. I was very lucky that there was a workshop in Bromley, bizarrely enough, called Clown Alley, where a few people, there's only about 15 of us, but Andre Vincent used to go there. I went there. A guy called Richard Gauntlet went there. And a guy called Piers Halpenny. He was an old ex-vaudeville performer who juggled quirky stuff. And he kind of became my juggling dad. And he'd always, he had all these books and he'd photocopy stuff and what about that? Have a go at this. And now there was this bloke and he used to do this. And he was a massive help to me. And if you look at the act, Piers Halpenny's throughout it. His influence is everywhere. He was doing gags and business, mainly stand-up gaggy stuff and tricks, but it was the sort of tennis racket, 2 balls, a little bit of plate. He was the first person that ever showed me any plate tricks, that kind of stuff. That was what
so
gave me the love of the weirdly different stuff.
Do you mean the pre-80s stand-up, your tar bookie kind of stand-up?
Yeah, there were always bad gags.
Yeah,
there's a great gag for dropping. You go, I haven't been feeling very well, but I'm picking up now. Yeah, not the kind of joke you could do now, but at the time it was probably a great joke.
I think you could do those jokes now, because I think when you do variety, people put their magnifying glass down a little bit, and they're like, okay, I can relax and have fun doing this.
Yeah, it depends how you sold it.
Yeah, you see some kids in stand-up gigs nowadays, and it's almost like they expect essay level, but dissection of subjects and all that kind of thing. Whereas vaudeville, I imagine, is more of a kind of having fun kind of thing. I feel like we've digressed a little bit.
Sorry,
I've digressed. It's me. So you're training with, what was the chap's name again?
Piers Halpenny. Michael Piers was his show name.
So you're training with him, and so you've got the character now.
No, not even training. It was like he was always there at the workshops, and he'd come over and go, "Oh, Steve, the move is," and he'd show you something and leave you go on with it and see how you went, and if you followed it or pushed it. And like I said, he'd be forever giving you these things and have a little look at that, go for that, try that. One of my signature pieces is I do a bottle balance routine. Bottle, tray, bottle, and some horrendous overacting for about 15 minutes while the volunteer hands me the glasses, and that ends on a juggle. But Piers originally gave me that as a straight piece of balancing trick with a mouth stick. You'd have the bottle on there, and then the finale would be that. And I didn't really know what a mouth stick was. I certainly didn't have one. So the balance went there, and I always talked in the act, so that stayed. And that was the original time I did that. It was a 2-minute piece, I think. Can I have a glass? Thanks. Can I have a glass? Thanks. Yeah. And then you work it and you build it.
It gets fleshed out and material comes in. I watched the routine, in fact, earlier today, and what I found quite nice about that routine is it's a good example of the faux chaos, pretend chaos, being out of control as it appears to the lay audience and the volunteer, but in fact everything is all under control. I'm playing you like a harp at this moment. Yeah.
You've paused.
When did that work?
Hang on, I've lost you.
Work start on the street then, this high skill stuff. You don't see many high. Did you catch that?
I lost the first part. You try again?
Yeah, no worries. So the stuff like the multiple balancing and some of the other stuff you develop, complicated work, difficult tricks. Did you do them on the street?
Yeah.
Or did you just design them for cabaret? So there were street pieces, you developed and worked on them. And
I worked the act until I felt it was good enough to go indoors. So everything that was there then went indoors.
What year we were looking at
a bit later.
When you're developing the bottle balancing, what year are we looking at now? How far into your performance career?
85.
So we're a good 6 years in by this point, yeah.
Let me see. Started performing at the end of 83.
Oh no, so we're 3 years in then.
Yeah, I remember being gutted because I had the choice of going back to Butlins in 83 or staying at Covent Garden, and I thought, well, if I go back to Butlins, I've got loads of show experience. And I went back to Butlins, did that, came back, and Alex had just leapt in front of me. It was miles ahead. His juggling was 50% better than mine at least, and he'd got a really nice show by then. And I came back with some old clown stuff I've been doing at Butlins. It was totally the wrong choice, probably, but I did get married, and that was a really cool thing. So it was worth it.
And it seems like doing Butlins and stuff like that maybe set you up for your later career a bit more because you've got experience of it. You've got experience of working in.
I got on a big stage, which I enjoyed. I was petrified. I remember at the time, if I was in the Red Coat show in the evening, I couldn't eat after breakfast with that sort of sick feeling in your stomach. But
what was it like performing? We're jotting about a little bit, but I am quite interested in the life of performing Redcoat, particularly now that you're not
very easy. It was very easy because everyone's on your side. They know you. You're their friend. You're around all day, and they know you're not a professional entertainer. So you've got a massive support there. No one's expecting too much. So if you come out with something a bit nice, yay, great. But
so you're not a stage performer then when you go and work as a Redcoat, because it's, you know, I only know, but is it Heidi High?
Yeah,
the sitcom. I think that's my best knowledge of Redcoats. You know,
it's a little bit like that.
Redcoats.
It is a little bit like that. You have to run all the competitions and all the rest of it. You fill in the forms and go, yeah, you know, can you run a darts? Yeah, darts competition. Basketball, yeah, darts. And you get there, oh, because you got no idea. You just lied on the form. But you know, you find some guest who knows what they're doing, and you put them in charge, and you learn off them, and the next time you can do it. Yes. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it.
And what do you think you took away?
Go on.
Oh, sorry. What do you think you took away?
Don't know. I got to see a lot of acts, which was nice. I got to be on stage.
Were they more the variety acts that you'd see in the 50s and 60s? For some reason,
probably you'd have like the main acts were in the Gaiety Theatre, if I remember rightly, and you'd have people like Richard Deloro was the juggler at the time. He used to come. Russ Stevens was the magician, who now is very famous in the magic world and is a big advisor on Britain's Got for the magicians. Who else was there? Clive Webb. He's do you know Clive Webb?
I don't know. Please.
He's an insane magician. Very good. I remember he was my absolute god for a while because I had to do Spotlight for him. Duncan Norvell did it was there a few times. I did Spotlight a couple of times because, you know, they just need bodies to go and point a light at someone. So I went and did that for Clive. And I'd started doing the Redcoat show, after which I couldn't eat after breakfast. And then Clive was my god. He was stuffing his face with a chicken leg, literally just nom 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 nom. And he went, "Oh, you're on, Mr. Webb." And he went, nom 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 on stage. I just thought, my hero. How does it get better than that? Who else was on there? Nuts and Bolts, comedy band, the 5-piece comedy character, the mad professor, the geek, the whatever. 5-piece playing the Hoover type stuff. Really, really lovely group. Right. So I got to meet a few people. And I got to be comfy to a point on stage. Because the second year, the year after I'd thought, okay, this is what I want to do, I got into everything. Every single show I could get my hands on. I was in there going, ooh, me.
And you're just acquiring tools, I assume, at this point.
Yeah, I mean, my juggling was not coming on at all. But I was getting on a stage and I was learning.
And do you think it's valuable for other entertainers who are in the kind of this beginning of their careers to spread their net wide in terms of the skills they have, or should they focus, in your opinion?
Interesting. I think focus, actually. Don't go too wide, because it's better to be a master of a few than vaguely good at everything. You need to shine somewhere. You have to shine.
Yeah. Well, you have to be exceptional, don't you? Somewhere?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say spread at the beginning, but then narrow down to what's good for you and what you like most. Just don't.
So, sorry.
No, that was it. There was nothing deeper there.
Cool. So you're developing the more skilled stuff now. You're working the workshop. You're developing the bottle routine. How does the street work develop from there then?
I was doing all the shows I could. I was opening on a one china plate routine, which didn't go down well with the body poppers, really, because I was dropping, obviously, and then trying to get all the little bits of china. Poor old Melvin and Ozzy weren't too chuffed by that. I was just trying to crank out the shows and get better each time. Like I'd be there and I'd always do the early show. I kind of became king of the early shows for a while, where the first booked show that anyone actually wants to do is maybe 11. So I'd go, anyone want to do the 10:30 slot? And I'd have a crack at that. And that was when I first remember someone saying to me, you're starting to get it now. Where I think I made 25 quid, but built a fair-sized edge and made the 25 quid on a 10:30 in the morning, Saturday morning probably.
And feel after that?
Fantastic. What's not to love? There was, you know, it's also a respect thing, isn't it? At Covent, you desperately want the respect of everyone who's there. And until I started doing the hat, I had none at all. Until the character came out and I came out, I was just another bloke doing bits. Yeah. And that changed everything.
Was there a reason you were picking the 10:30s, apart from just they were available?
I wasn't picking them. I had my other spot already. It was just nobody else wanted to work. So whoever really wanted to take a punt could do it. And I was always the one.
Were you doing it for the cash, or were you doing it for the experience? Were you doing it because I'm both? Fair enough.
Both. Yeah, I was doing it because it was fun. I was doing it to see if I could do it. And there's also that thing, if they haven't seen anything, they're more likely to pay. As you go later in the day and they've been hanging around a lot and they've seen a few things, and it's harder to get the cash out. And
fresh pockets.
Yeah, fresh pockets. And I think a few people haven't realised that.
Yeah, definitely so. So one of the routines that I watched, and I enjoyed all your work, but one of the things I really enjoyed over the last couple of days, kind of just making myself more aware of the stuff you do, was a routine you do with furniture.
Yeah.
Very unusual. I mean, it's even more than found objects. You know, they're specifically picked to go together. How do you develop a piece of work like that?
That came when I started working Junglers in Battersea, the comedy club. They had a poster up on the wall. I always thought it was a guy called Kara, who was a German juggler.
Just before we go on, can we get the year for this? Just before we go on, just give it the placing in time.
I'm going to say 86.
Fair enough.
Roughly, give or take 86. Saw the poster on the wall. Guy stood underneath. He's clearly got them. They're hanging from the ceiling. He's got a chair. He's got a table, and he's got one of those sort of pieces of wood with the paper. The old paper rack things from the old cafes, and he's stood under there looking like he's juggling them. And you know, we're all trying to do our own stuff, find something different. I looked at that and thought, oh, I like the look of that, I'll have a go. And it took me about 3 years, probably 2 years to get the right props, because I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't know any prop makers. I remember one time I had bamboo stuff made. I had a bamboo table and I had a bamboo chair, and I went down there going, oh, right, this is it. I'm gonna nail this. And the chair and the table crashed together in midair, and the table broke, and I pretty much cried. But eventually sussed out what the chair I needed was.
Before we get to the bit you sussed out, can you just talk about the first time you tried it, the experience of trying to begin the journey of writing this piece?
I broke it down into 3 sets, actually. I would try and juggle 2 balls on the chair, 2 balls on the table, and 2 balls and the vase. It wasn't originally supposed to be a vase with flowers in it. It was supposed to be a lamp. But every time I missed the lamp, it got bent up, destroyed. I needed something that was a little bit tougher. So in came the vase. And then it was literally piece by piece. Once I felt I'd got a strong pattern with the chair and the 2 balls, I'd then try and put it together. So I'd do maybe the vase and the table and a ball, until at some point you just have to go, right, this is it. And then you throw them and run away, and then you come back, and maybe it lasts a little bit longer. It took about 8 months from having the props that were the right props to being able to juggle it.
And that was like year 2 of mucking about with props. So for 2 years you muck about with props, get the understanding of what it is to throw things that aren't designed to be thrown. And then after 2 years, you get the props made. You decided, right, these are the props that work.
The chair was an actual normal chair in the end. It was one of those cafe bentwood chairs. That was that's the ideal chair, which is great. The table we had to get made because no one makes those tables anymore. That's a thing from a past age. And the flowers was just a normal vase that we put a little bit of weight in to make it a little more steady. And if you drop it, the bottom of the vase just crumples unless you've got something in it. If it's a solid floor, especially like a Covent Garden, you drop that a couple of times, it's destroyed. Yeah. So, yeah.
So what was the? So when you first put it together at the end of the 3 years,
yep,
was that the routine we see today?
Pretty much. I've never really felt I've come up with a great way to present it. Originally, the idea was to do it in the clubs and do it as an encore. But when you've dragged the stuff to the gig and dragged it back a couple of times and not got the encore you were hoping for, eventually go, "Oh, bollocks, I'll put it in the front." And yeah, that's how it came to. I started opening with it, and then I realized it's just such a good opener. It's a complete statement. It's, look what I can do. It's, I'm different. It's, look how good I am, in a sense. But it's also, especially if you're sat in a club and you're right there and I'm chucking my furniture, you're going to pay attention.
Yeah.
And the clubs were quite rough at the time.
So what was the experience like of, because I talked to Paul Morocco, who mentioned you quite a lot.
Love Paul.
Clubs. What was the experience of being a juggler in Jongleurs during a time when I assume the majority of the comedy scene is all experimental stand-up, this alternative art scene? So what's the experience?
It wasn't stand-up, though. It was everything. It wasn't stand-up at all. It was a mix of everything. So. Oh, Christ, it wasn't the format at all. I mean, after about 8-10 years, it became one guy, one microphone, because that's kind of what paid. But when I first started, there was all kinds of stuff. You'd have magicians, you'd have fakirs, you'd have people just playing straight music. You'd have comedy double acts, you'd have a cappella groups, you'd have bands, you'd have jugglers, there was everything. Anyone with a great idea or even a crap idea was up there trying it. And it was really, really nice. I miss that. The nearest now to something like that would be Martin Soane's gig in London. I can't remember where it is, but Martin's from that era. And, you know, if you've got an idea for a crazy show, he's the bloke. Go see him and put it on stage.
There you go. You heard it now. So how did you get into that scene?
I was street performing. I was hanging out with a group of other performers, and we used to go to a place called the Tunnel Club, which was in Greenwich, which was a total dive. It was a dreadful place if you're a performer. If you're in the audience, it was great. The audience was like, the audience was the show in some ways. You could have the worst act in the world and kill at the Tunnel Club, and have the best act in the world and just die horribly. And
was it because they were combative?
Because what? Oh, Christ,
yeah, the audience was combative?
The audience were famed for heckling and being horrible. And the guy who used to run it, Malcolm Hardy, is one of the showbiz's greatest characters, Martin. Can I swear on here?
Yeah, you can swear. Yeah. Okay.
Malcolm's idea of an intro for you. He'd go, "Oh, that was shit, wasn't it? Never mind, soon blow over. Here's Poet." And that'd be you. That'd be wherever your act was, you'd be on. And
I've heard a story with Stuart Lee talking about it, in fact, and he said that he had an interesting way of cussing you off to keep the audience on side, but you never felt shunned by it. You didn't feel like it was nasty.
Oh, Malcolm, we all love Malcolm. Malcolm was just such a character. But the gig was Malcolm's gig. And it was a very difficult place to play. But bizarrely, people like Jeremy Hardy, you know, a little Jewish guy in a cardigan, used to go great there. People like Esther was there all the time. But you'd have bands, you'd have Malcolm and Martin Soane would do some stuff they'd written up the day before or just thought of. Everyone and anything was welcome. But
And so what was
the
the
point of how I started was
yeah.
we'd seen Malcolm and we'd seen the Tunnel Club, but we hadn't seen any other clubs. There were only a couple around. Jongleurs had been going about maybe a year or something like that. And with Malcolm, you'd bowl up and go, "Oh, hey, Malcolm, can I do an open spot?" And he'd go, "Yeah, off you go." And you'd go and you'd get shouted and booed and whatever, and then off you go. But so I turned up having thought, okay, I think I'm ready now for Jongleurs. I went and saw the show, went and talked to, I think Arthur Smith was the compere, went up to Arthur, like to do an open spot, and they said, "Come back in 6 months." Okay. So 6 months later, I turned up with all my gear, expecting to go on. And they went, "Who are you?" They went, "But you said, you said."
Yeah. I got a booking 6 months ago.
Yeah. And they said, I think they would just felt a bit guilty about that. So I didn't work that night, but I worked another night. And then from that was my intro to the clubs. That's where I started, was Jongleurs Battersea.
So how did you work the other night then? Because I assume you got on there, they said, you know, "What the fuck are you doing here?" You know, when we told you come back in 6 months, it's a term of phrase, you know.
I just kept bothering them.
Okay, so perseverance.
I just kept turning up going, "It's cold on the street now. It's cold. It's you know, it's winter, right? I've got, look, give me a chance, let me on." And they did, which to their credit, they did, which was lovely. But it was much more open now. I don't believe that there are many at all, if any, special acts working on the circuit now. It's pretty much stopped, I think.
Not
I'd like
from
to
what I can see. I went for a little period of trying to get into stand-up before I realised that you don't get paid doing it, which was a bit of a, you know, it wasn't the end, but it definitely was a put-off after being a street performer and being paid to do shows. It's so counterintuitive to not being paid.
It wasn't like that at that time. It's all about time and place and luck. And I was right time, right place. And you could get in. I did, I think, one open spot, and that was it. And then I was paid. Whereas now you've got to do, I don't know, 4 half spots and a quarter spot and a this spot and a that spot, all for free, till eventually they let you in.
I think one of the jokes on the open mic scenes is that, you know, you're never going to get out of here. The people on the open mic scenes, that's what they do. They do the open mic scene. Yeah. You know, it's not designed to get them into a club earning money. It's designed like a clown community buddy project.
That's really sad,
have a go. Well, how do you get around that? You know, so many people. It's such an oversubscribed marketplace in terms of people wanting stage time.
I guess you have to be the last guy left knocking on the door. You've got to be that person that won't go away, that won't leave you alone. That
But it does seem like people who don't stop working, who are obsessed, are the people that make it. And you don't hear many stories of someone who go, "Yeah, you know, he had 6 days a week off and he did 1 day a week, and that's why he's where he is now at the top."
You have to really want it, I think. That's the only. You really have to want it.
Yeah. So, what was the experience like for you? You're doing your first gig in Jongleurs. They finally let you go on stage. What's the experience of that like?
It was weird because I think my first actual paid gig was New Year. They put me on after New Year. Ainsley Harriott had a double act with oh god, Paul, can't remember his name. I do apologise. It was called the Calypso Twins, and they went on at 12 o'clock, and then the place was going mental. They were all stood on their tables dancing and singing, and I'm waiting around the back with my bag of props. And then Arthur Smith went out and went, "Well, we're going to calm you all down now, and we got a juggler for you." And he sat them all down, and I came on, and it was a weird atmosphere right from the get-go. And then what was I doing? There was shouts.
Just why was the atmosphere weird?
Well, because everyone was having a wonderful party. They were on the tables dancing, and then he sat them all down and went, "Juggler." It's how I lasted as long as I did, I don't know. But what happened was, I went on, I started, and I remember thinking I should probably do this as quick as I possibly can and then get off and let them all party. and I had the bottle of my face, the tray, and I think there was a broken glass up there for some reason, and one of those farty balloons, you know, that go around the room, and that went around the room, and that was got a nice laugh. And then a matchbox pinged off my chest, and I thought, I really need to finish this quickly. And then that was followed by a snow spray can, I think, which was followed by a glass ashtray, which just missed. And I literally, I wasn't going to leave. I wasn't having that at all. But I went through the act as fast as I possibly could and got off. And then I found what had happened was, you know, Ainsley Harriott, he's the chef now, isn't he? But he's a huge
yeah, well, I don't know for being a chef, yeah.
Yeah, but he was an act on the circuit for years and a great one. But he had a brother, and the brother was the same size up as Ainsley, but also wide, like rugby player size. And he spotted the guy that was chucking stuff and gone over and explained very kindly that if he carried on, he was going to put him through the window. It all calmed down a bit, and God bless Ainsley's brother. I got off, and that was my first paid spot, I think, at Jongleurs.
And how did the gig feel about you? Were they like, oh, it went well done, or?
I think they were pleased I survived. I don't really remember any particular feedback other than it was New Year, everyone was going mad and woohoo. Don't remember more than that, really.
I suppose they weren't looking at you to necessarily form a great act at that time. It's just...
Yeah, and they should never have put me on then in the first place. I should have been much, much earlier. And especially when I'm up dancing, it's the kiss of death, isn't it?
Oh, big time. If you're in it, I've done gigs where they have one room, which is the music room, and one room, which is the cabaret room. And as soon as they open the door and the music's there, you're dead in the water. It's like you're interrupting people's good time.
Well, because you are. Essentially.
Look at me!
Look at me! Woo-hoo! Come on, yeah, juggling. Bye.
And
right.
So how did you, after that gig, did you then get more gigs from these guys? Did they see, well, this guy's solid?
And bizarrely enough, the next one was equally weird because it was Maria and John that used to run that club at Maria Kempinska, and John, the husband, he let in a group of 16 Welsh rugby fans. Which probably wasn't his wisest move. And he told me just before I went on. And I thought, oh, Christ, here we go, because they were all really drunk. And it was a wonderful spot, really quiet. And what happened was that they were all so drunk they fell asleep. And then afterwards, I remember passing them, almost getting into a fight with John about the cabaret was so shit because they fell asleep. They wanted their money back.
Oh, well, sorry, they had a good quiet sleep.
Yeah, exactly. I was extremely relieved because it could have gone horribly pear-shaped. But it was a wonderful gig. Jongleurs Battersea was a fantastic gig.
Did you become a name there then? Were you one of the fixtures of the club, so to speak?
Yeah. There was a phase there when there were a bunch of jugglers that used to close the venue. Chris and Alex, me, Paul Morocco, and the two Marks were the sort of the regulars. And there was another group called Wack and Zane who were working there for a while, I think. And I started, obviously I didn't start on the closing spot. I worked my way up to it. But John just seemed to like putting species in. And it was just it was a lovely room to play. It was really nice. The audiences were drunk. They were rowdy, but they were smart. They were clever. And it was totally the place to be.
Is it what they describe as a Glasgow audience nowadays? I mean, I get the smell of it being similar to that. They'll heckle you, but they're heckling because they want to help. They're not trying to fuck you over.
It was a mixture of both, but it was never really particularly aggressive. They were good crowds to work. And if they liked you, they go mental. It was really a good buzz. Some of my best nights ever have been there.
And so is there any particularly big stories you have from there? Any instances that stick in the mind?
I don't know. I had one particular day and night that was just a real high point for me at that time. I was still doing the street sometimes in the day, and I think I did 6 shows that day or something like that. I did 4 in the street and two in the clubs, or 4 in the clubs and 2 in the street. I can't remember. But I hit the £100 show, for street, which at the time was what you aimed for, what everyone wanted to get. And then I stood them up twice at Jongleurs, yeah. So I did that and got the standing ovation. I couldn't sleep. I was so high about it all. It was just wonderful. It was such a good feeling.
Coming off from a good show, do you get that wired, kind of anxious, I can't sleep feeling?
Not so much that, but there's the high at the end of it. And then there's the, oh God, it hurts a bit. No, I mean, at the time, no, it was just all fun. But there's, when you've done a long show.
Yes.
So when you've done a long show and then you've got to put all the props away and go find your house again, it's a little bit more tiring now.
Yeah, I can imagine. So how long did you work in Jongleurs for? How long was that spell of your life? From 86 up till?
It was a good 12 years, I think.
Wow. So you were a proper fixture.
Oh, yeah. I did all the comedy clubs, you know, Comedy Store and all around the country, and the little theatre stuff that they used to do. And also,
now, how did you...
Jongleurs,
please carry on.
Battersea was the place to be at the time. I was very lucky in that. Right place, right time. So there would always be someone to book you for something there, always. All the TV people used to go there. It was just the place people went. So you'd pick up work all the time from it. You'd make connections, you'd pick up work. And there were some great acts. There was just
how do you see it change over the years? And 12 years is a good portion of time. You've seen the scene move from the 80s to the 90s. What
yeah, I mean, at the beginning, it was anyone and everyone with an idea or an act, and the big acts were there and the little acts were there, all the bands and all the characters. And slowly over time, I think firstly people, all right, let's go back a little bit. The first comedian I ever saw, proper comedian in a comedy club, was an American. Can't remember his name now. Barry something, I think his name was. And he had a tight set. He actually had jokes and stuff. It wasn't like old style jokes. It was the sort of more experience-based jokes, you know, where you put yourself in the situation or whatever.
You might call it observational comedy.
Yeah, observational comedy. Yeah. And a guy called, I think, John Dowie. And before that, everything was just, it was either weird or silly or angry. There was a lot of like anti-Thatcher stuff where you just got on and went, oh, Margaret Thatcher, not very nice, really, is she? In other terms, possibly. And that went over big. But there came a point when people realized, actually, I'm a comic. I should be doing the comedy and writing the gags, and I should be more professional about this, I guess. The group started to go away because it was too expensive, I think. No one could really make much money out of it. And after a while, it stops becoming fun and it becomes more difficult. Someone wants to get a job. The groups fall apart. Audience-wise, they were great. And then I think it became, with all the franchising out of all the clubs and stuff, they became a different thing.
And is this in the 90s now?
Yeah, up to about 2000, I think, was the last real clubs I did. Unless it's, you know, friends of mine like the Bearcat Club, I'll always go do there, or something for Simon and Har Bloody Har. I'll always turn out for him because they're lovely gigs. But the franchised ones just became getting them in the door, getting the money off them, getting them out again. So you had lots of stags and hens coming. And those kind of audiences don't really want the clever stuff. And there were a couple of brave people that did do that. But what you then got, also because I was closing at that time then, so you'd see an audience go from quite a nice crowd, and you think, oh, I'd love to work that, to thinking, oh, and then to thinking, oh God, I hope I survive this. So you go out to this, and they didn't want, they'd be wanting the sort of rude stuff, the lewd stuff, the swearing and all that. And it got to a point where I was pumping out the same act because it had to work. You can't be the last act on and then try something new and bomb with it. It has to be your best stuff, and it has to work because that's your job. And it became less and less fun. And I found that the stuff I was doing, I didn't like much either, because I'd put stuff in to amuse the people in front of me. And I didn't like that much either.
What kind of stuff do you put in? So you were putting swearing in, I suppose?
Oh, yeah, some harsher stuff, foul jokes. Yeah, just stuff that I didn't particularly like, but they liked.
Have you found your entire career that there's been a battle between what you want to do and what the audience will accept you doing?
Not too much of one, no, because I'm quite a happy bunny and I like doing it, and my humour tends to work. I've always aimed at the family audience, but when I came out from the clubs, I found it very difficult to turn that back round. I'd be on a cruise ship and the odd bastard would slip out and, you know, and you just can't do that.
I mean, this is a new element of the story. So did you go to cruise ship during your Jonglers time, or?
No, that came much later. I was supporting Hale and Pace at the North Pier in Blackpool, and lovely boys they are. And someone came up to me and said, "We're interested in you. Would you mind doing a showcase for us?" And so I did it, and I got a ton of work off it. Which
what was the experience doing the showcase
like? It was not the best showcase, but it was the best showcase. It was badly organised. It was badly done. There were only 8 tables there, and there were 8 tables of agents and no audience. So imagine that for fun and laughter. And so what the acts had done, we'd all sort of piled in behind to try and make an audience for each other. Oh. The sound wasn't working. There was no compare. It was just the DJ reading straight off your CV. The ceiling was low and it was glass. It was like a mirrored ceiling. Wow. So I got there and I found the magician sticking black tack to the ceiling to try and cover up all his tricks.
Stop the angles.
Yeah, the band had taken, it was a tiny stage, but the band had taken most of it. So there was only like a little crescent in the middle. And first act on was the magician. And he couldn't put his props there. So he got hold of a couple of us and said, "Look, can you help with the thing?" So, okay, he got one of these tables that you pull people out of. There were 2 people in there. And so we come in pushing this table along, pretending like it didn't weigh anything. And then we tried to pick it up, it weighed a ton. So we both got in the face. And then, ta-da!
How was that done?
But I have to say, I got so much work from that one thing. I'm still working off it now.
I didn't expect you guys to help each other. I thought as soon as you go into a corporate environment, it's man eat man, you know, dog eat dog.
I've never found that, actually.
No, I mean, I've never been there, so I don't know. It's my outside perspective.
Well, we're all still just performers doing a job. And once you're there, we've all got the job, so why not be nice, I guess. And a lot of it is people that you know anyway, people that you're friends, people you've known for years. So if you're lucky, you meet a few people like that, and if not, you try and make friends with the new lot.
Yeah.
But it's pretty much like you'd be at a club gig, trying to, you know, friendly chat, a bit of banter, what they like.
Just being matey. So how is the cruise ships? As a streetie, moving on to them?
Well, you got to remember that I've got all that time from street to doing the clubs to doing theatres and stuff, so I'm used to being on a bigger stage. It's lovely. It's exactly what I needed, to be honest, because I went from doing the same 20 minutes to having a 45, 50-minute spot. And I'm a juggler. I'm a special act. I'm never going to get famous enough to fill theatres on my own. If I go on a cruise ship, most times I'll have a good-sized audience in a nice theatre with lights that work and all the rest of it, and the focus is on me, and people will get to see what I've got to say, and I rise and fall by what I do, and that's a really cool thing.
Yeah,
it's lovely.
And so long have you been doing that for then? You take it you're doing it up until this day, or up until?
Yeah, I mean, not exclusively. I do a lot of other things as well. I don't think it's good to have all the eggs in the one basket, as it were. But 20 years now I've been doing it 20 years on the ships now. Christ, I remember meeting a juggler years ago at Covent Garden. He was an American lad, and going, "Oh, you're a juggler! Wow, how long have you been juggling?" And he went, 8 years. Oh, 8 years. And I was so impressed by that. I can't tell you. I just thought, if only 8 years. Well, how amazing is that? And it is. It's just so cool.
And so, are you happy now? Are you happy with the life you found yourself in?
Yeah, it's lovely. I do what I like doing. I can work or not work. I'm never going to be famous, but I'm working at a really nice level, doing the stuff I enjoy. And if I've got something new I like, or I can put stuff in, I can take stuff out, the decision's mine.
Does it bother you that you'll never be famous, or that you don't believe you'll ever be famous?
No. I did want to be, for sure. I was hugely ambitious. And to a point, I did a lot of TV and this, that, and the other. But as a juggler, as a special act, you're never going to be famous. You might be known amongst other special acts. But unless, as a magician, you can be, I think. But the problem, I think, is the turnover of material. As a juggler, it's just too damn slow.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, even with stand-up acts, if you watch, whoever famous you work with, it's always that first act. Even if you think, Christ, why are you famous? Oh dear, that was awful. And then you watch the act that they did, their original act. You go, oh, okay, that's why. Because that was the good one. That was the one they honed over 15 years and worked the clubs with and whatever else. That was what made them good. And then the problem is then that the TV just sucks everything out of you, and there's nothing left to put in. And I think
so you need some material out of you.
Yeah, as a skills-based performer, it just takes too long. Say I do a start and they go, oh, love that balancing thing, or the thing where you set your head on fire and whatever. And so you do that, and then next time you come back, you do the furniture and something else. And that took me, I don't know, to hone that probably 10 years.
Yeah.
And then the next bit you do, they go, oh, we'd love to have you again. So you write something specially for it. And it's not quite as funny, is it? Of course it's not. I haven't worked it for 10 years.
Yeah. And so what's the solution for variety acts if they want to become big? Because you can't, a stand-up, I suppose, can go to someone and say, right, write me an hour, watch all my work, make it sound like me, write me an hour, and then you spend a couple of months learning how to enunciate the material and memorize it. It's there. As a skill actor, you could turn around to someone and go, right, write me an hour, and then you have to go away for 5 years and learn how to do it.
I don't honestly know the answer to that, but I would say by not doing the skill stuff. If you look at Tapeface,
yes,
it's a wonderful act. It's great, but it's just great ideas that he's had. It's not something he's had to go away into a dark corner and work on.
And what's really nice about his work in particular is what he's done is he's taken the kind of sense of that street clown, that playful street, the street routines, the muckabout, and kind of chopped it up, isolated it, and presented it so well on a stage that it works. It really, I mean, I've tried not to watch it too much because I'm afraid it's going to infect my mind and I'll end up becoming, Tapeface point two. Do you have that worry? Do you worry about watching people and their work kind of permeating your own work?
Not anymore, no. Because my sort of thing is I'm so set in how I perform and what I do now that it's not really an issue. But I can watch something and go, oh, that trick, I like that trick. Maybe I can do something with that, and then I'll see where I can take it or do with it.
Yeah, and have you thought about going straight?
Recently, yeah. But that's the weird thing, isn't it? As an ex-street performer, everyone, I don't care if you're 80 years old or you're whoever, in the back of your head, there's always that, if it all goes pear-shaped, I can always go back on the street. And then it all did go pear-shaped, and we can't.
No.
I
Believe it or
still
not,
do festivals and stuff, which I really enjoy, which is closest to it, I guess.
you're doing festivals now? I suppose the festival is cracked off, before quarantine.
Yeah.
Are you doing live festivals?
Yeah. No, I love it.
What's your experience? Well, when I say live festivals, are you doing the internet live festivals, like a Zoom festival?
No. I don't really think. Well, I did a few things for people who wanted some stuff for the NHS, which I thought, yeah, of course, why would you not? I don't really think my stuff works particularly well without an audience, because it's all give me that, help with this, and if you haven't got that, you've got nothing to play with. No. So and I think it's more difficult. I've got a few bits I can just present straight skill, but who wants to watch that? If
this carries on, are you going to work towards that?
Probably not, I think. Probably not. I'm not, as you've seen already, I'm not particularly good with machinery and the interwebs and all that.
We did pretty well. I was with buddy John McKenna earlier on trying to get stuff working, and we're doing it. Yeah, he's going to be next Monday.
Fantastic. One of the first acts I ever saw, John.
Really? Say a little bit. I mean, I need to do a lot of research on
with the handcuffs and razor blades. Yeah.
Was he any good?
It was a good act. Yeah, he used to come on in a diver's gear with flippers, and what was it? He'd do a whole bunch of business with people, and essentially his act was he'd get locked up, and then he'd do a big speech. The big Henry V, is it the big speech? Men of England now abed shall think themselves accursed that they were not here St. Crispin's Day. And then he'd shove his head in a bucket of water and escape from the chains, and then pull out the razor blades. That was his finale. And then he had the bucket there for the money. Hey?
Why do you think there's less originality on the street then? Because that's an original finale, and that's fun and interesting. And if I saw that on the street in Covent Garden tomorrow, if by magic we were out on the street queuing up to do shows tomorrow, I'd be amazed, and that'd be something I remember the whole year because it's different. Now that shows you that potentially, I'm saying because I've talked to so many people from the 80s now, and I've started calling it the golden era because there's so many different acts, so many different variety of stuff, and it doesn't seem to me like there is now.
I suppose there's a graduation towards what makes the most money. I think that's probably the answer to it. If I can buy this prop and do these things in this way, then I can make enough money. And I guess that's a prison you get stuck in then, is it? Do you think?
Maybe. I mean, I do think that, and I'm going to try not to talk about myself too much, but just very, very briefly, I spent a long number of years trying to deconstruct my show to get away from the things that become intuitive after a long time. When I began, there wasn't hack in my eyes. I didn't get shown that. It was all public, and you take and you build, and I build a formula show, and it's incredibly hard to try and deprogram that because you want the good feeling. You want the adrenaline.
And there are certain things that push towards that. It's like when you think your average street audience is 3 deep, right? After which you have trouble watching. So maybe you've got a fourth layer, and after that, the people at the back are going to peel away and they're not going to pay, right? So you go up, don't you? And it's what goes big, what goes high. You either try and sit people down so you can play big, or you go up yourself. For me, it was and I'd make that run 20 minutes sometimes, because they're waiting for that big final payoff when you finally complete what you've set out to do. But you could, although I never really thought about it at the time, you can see the bottles from quite a distance, so you can still feel involved. Never occurred to me at the time. It was just like, oh, this works pretty well and it's a good finish. But
Steve, why at that period then? If it's about money, if it's about making the most cash, why are you doing a routine that isn't a high unicycle routine? Why are you not on a pole? Why did you develop something different than other?
I wasn't that concerned. I liked money, but I wanted a good show much more than I wanted the money.
And
And there were also some good examples around at the time. Huh?
Just before you go on, when you say good show, what do you mean by good show?
I wanted to rock the house. I wanted
the
money.
What if we can't use a single kind of catchphrase like good show or rock the house? What is that? And I'm saying I know as well, mate. I'm not, but as an interviewer, I'm trying to be ignorant to the point of silliness to try and get your idea of what it is. Yeah, but what's a good show? What do you judge as a good show? What do you judge as a quality piece of work? How do you view that?
I suppose something where you'd walk away and go, I really enjoyed that.
Is it a big crowd? Is it a lot of money?
Not necessarily. The other thing was there were a lot of people there that didn't have huge kick-ass shows, but were lovely people and had lovely shows that you'd watch and go, oh, I really, what's his name now? God, it's so long ago now. There were performers there. I mean, there was one particular guy, a juggler called Tony. If anyone's watching this, just put in what Tony's name was, please. But
well, we do have a lot of people watching. I think a lot of your old buddies are here.
Oh, brilliant! Hello, guys. But yeah, Tony had this show, and Tony didn't really want a big crowd. He just wanted a nice little crowd that he could have fun with and enjoy. And if he felt he didn't give a good show, he wouldn't take any money off them. He'd actually send them away and refuse to take money off them. There were some lovely acts that weren't big money acts that didn't care whether they were big money acts or not. Have you got it?
Tony Anthony.
That's it. Good old Tony Anthony. I'm so sorry. He was the other juggler I saw right at the beginning as well. Tony was just brilliant. But he had his quirky sense of humor and he did what he did. And Tony just loved it. It wasn't about the money for him at all. And there were a few shows like that were just lovely shows.
So why do you think it changed then? And I say this because maybe it seems like towards the 90s, you're moving towards more junglers than the street. Mm-hmm. And maybe I'm wrong there. I know you still work in street, but it does seem like you had contact up to the mid-90s, something like this.
Yeah, I'd still put back, or I'd see people, or I'd come to a few shows.
Did you see a change? And what change was that? Particularly in Covent, because it does seem like it's a focal point of a lot of
these. First big one was the musicians went. Next one was probably sound.
And so when the musicians went, what was the effect of that change?
Less variety.
I'm sorry, man. I'm being really, really detailed with this, and I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I've never really thought about it in those terms before. I think also if you've got examples of all kinds of people doing all kinds of different stuff, you kind of think, well, what kind of weird stuff can I do? But once it starts to narrow itself down a little bit, and maybe you're not seeing so many different things, I think, yeah, once people went sort of with the mics and all that, that changed things a little bit too.
Is there almost a parallel by the sounds of it from the alternative comedy circuit and the street circuit? You said when you first went to Jugglers, all these things are happening.
Yeah.
And now you're saying, well, you're in Covent and all these things are happening. And it seems like we get specialised and we get tight, and then suddenly it gets a bit sterile and stale.
I think maybe you're right. I mean, in them days, you'd have people like Randolph the Remarkable, whose big finale, he was in a short, chubby lad, and his mum was always lovely at the back watching him. And he'd be in his fakir pants, and he'd do his act in front of a bowl of lukewarm water. And his finale, the big piece of resistance, was he'd lie down flat on his tummy over the bowl and sort of squidge about like that, and he'd stand up with it triumphantly stuck to his belly, this bowl of lukewarm water. That was his big finish. It was wonderful. It was a fabulous act.
Yeah.
But I think that you're right, that once the sort of fun of it and doing all these weird things started to wear off a bit, it became about money more. And people started to see what made the money and what didn't, and maybe hone it in a little bit. Whereas at the beginning, you come in with all your ideas
And it's such a weird thing, isn't it? Because it seems to, as I say, once again, alternative comedy did the same thing that the street did, is they got better at the specific things they were doing. But it seems to be at the cost of the broader cultural development, you know?
Yeah. I mean, if I'm honest, I haven't seen a street show in a long time. But I do find them quite hard to watch.
Why?
If they're a standard street show. Well, because you've got the bit of blag at the beginning, the crowd building, screaming, clapping, shouting, whatever. If I'm talking about a standard street show, then you've got maybe one quick trick, then you've got maybe a thing with a kid, and then something big up high. But you've got that massive long wait now where nothing happens. Nothing happens.
People to get people.
Yeah.
I just have to go to the bathroom. You crack on, mate. I can hear you still. Oh.
I don't quite know what I was supposed to crack on about.
Well, so you see,
but yeah, in those days. Go on, sorry.
No, you were saying that you struggle watching shows because of the formula.
Yeah, I think when I was performing, I did too much in my show. Because there's a point there where if you go too high in the middle of the show, people will walk away. So I think the penultimate thing I used to do was the fire routine where I set my head on fire. And I used to always get a bit of a walk off on that.
You used to set your head on fire?
Yeah, that was one of my big bits, that was.
And so how do you set your head on fire?
Well, I used to do a chin balance and go back into the juggle. And because I had the hat, there was the sort of, well, what if I did that then? And then there was the thought of, I wonder if that's safe. So my father-in-law was a builder. So we got the hat that I was using and some fireproofing stuff. And we fireproofed it and we put a patch on top. And then I stuffed it full of paper. And we set fire to it and ran away. Came back to see if the paper had gone all brown and burnt. And when it didn't, we thought, okay, well, maybe there's a way we can do this. And then it became, I'd go into a chin balance and I'd headbutt the fire club. And the club I'd have some lighter fluid on the top and the club would hit the patch and I'd be juggling happily away with this big old blaze on the top of my head. And it was really funny because when I first did it, nobody did it. It was a thing. And I kind of thought, well, what are people going to do? I'm on fire. What are they going to do? they just sat there. Oh, okay. That's what they do then. I think a bloke threw his pint down my front to help put me out, possibly. But when you think of that, you don't really know how people are going to react. But the whole point was it was to look like an accident. I'd be going, oh, what? And then eventually, you put it out and you move on. And the lines come around it. And then, again, that would be one of my signature pieces from years now.
Yeah,
that was probably, that came pre-furniture, I think.
You learned it with play. It was developed by you,
Yeah.
Yeah. So just to get back onto my big focus, one of my as I said, my big things is with hack and development of shows and that kind of thing. And you said you didn't watch shows because of the formula.
What does hack mean? I'm not sure what you mean by that.
So hack is basically if there's a line that's done by everybody. So for example, sir, take your parachute off, you've landed.
Right.
I would describe that as a hack line. I think it comes from stand-up where you go, check that old hack.
Right, okay.
Doing the old material.
Yeah, makes sense.
And so, we've come to this point, as we talked about earlier, that perhaps it's slowly evolved because people are just trying to hone what they're doing, trying to maximize their income, to the point where now you'll watch 6 shows in a row and you'll be lucky if every single joke in it is not the same joke,
I mean, the early days at Covent, there were phases where everyone would do, like there was, I particularly remember one where everyone had a countdown in their act. I don't know why someone had obviously seen it and put it in and it had gone really well, and someone else has gone rather like that, and it's moved across, and then all of a sudden every act's got a countdown in it.
So one of the things I heard from, I can't remember who it was who said it, but it stuck in my mind what he said in one of the interviews. It might have been Paul Morocco, but I'm not sure. He said, or somebody said anyway, they said we were all friends. And that's why it didn't feel like there was any theft going on, I think, because we're all mates. It was Nick Nicholas.
We were mates, actually, yeah. I mean, we were all competitive as well. We were all... Yeah, there was a lot of competition. We were all competitive. We wanted to be better than everybody else or whatever. But we were all friends and friendly, yes.
Yeah. And so it's a sharing environment. Almost you guys being good people has fucked the rest of us down the line now.
I mean, don't get me wrong, it did get quite nasty at times at the Garden where people were all shouting at each other over the list on a regular basis. But in general, it was a really supportive atmosphere.
Did you see, I'm going to ask this now because it's something which I've been told by a lot of the older timers, bullying. Did you see bullying? Was the bullying there?
Not much, no. I did see some.
Yeah.
But no, not much. It was, people were pretty respectful. There was a lot of pushing it.
And so pushing it was kind of like rough and tumble kind of thing.
No, I don't mean on a physical level. I mean like pushing you like as in the list was a source of constant grief. Where I think there was one point the list was put up a certain time in the morning.
And can you just very briefly, just in a quick sentence, explain the list? Right.
The list was all the performers that wanted to perform that day. So the list was put up at a certain time and you arrived, you put your name on, and then you were supposed to stay there. So
were you there for 12 o'clock at night time?
it was getting to that, yeah. But no, not quite that bad. But what you'd have was somebody had a van, so they were around the corner. So the list went up and they went around the corner, sign the name up, back to the van. Somebody else was getting their bottler to sign up for them. Was that okay? There was all kinds of, so there'd be like minor arguments on a daily basis throughout the summer, and on the weekend it would almost break into groups all shouting at each other.
Was it factional there then? Did you have two
that
different
makes it sound terrible, but it wasn't. But
well, it's a mixture of stuff, you know. If you talk to people about their office and they talk about the arguments in their office, it'll make it seem like it's pretty battle royale, a fight to the death. But it's an element of it, isn't it? You know?
Yeah, it was just everyone needed to get a show in, and people were being a bit sneaky about getting on the list sometimes.
Was it a bit tense then? Because nowadays, if you go to a peak time, we'll get 30 plus entertainers on the peak time. So your Easter holidays, things like that. And you'll get 20 people on the weekends, and you'll get 15 people on the weekdays.
There were a lot of performers there, yeah. But pretty much everyone seemed to get a spot every day at that time. You'd also have arguments about somebody's in a double act with someone, but they also want to do their solo show. And then they're trying to get 2 spots.
Well, you'll be happy to hear this argument's still going on.
It's still ongoing, is it?
Yeah, it's still ongoing. This person signed in with this person. Oh, well, this person can't come in if this person did a single show inside, they can't.
Yeah, I don't know how you get around that. Whether you just, yeah.
See what you think about this, but I think the street, in terms of the way we act on the street, is one of the best examples of human beings being kind of decent. We go to a place which has income, and we don't argue that much. We work together, we find methods of cooperating, and we support each other. That's my view on it.
Can't argue that at all, can you? Yeah, but you have to get people to be decent about it. And, okay, this is what we'll do. We're all going to work here. We'll put all our names in a pot. We'll pull it out. We'll get the times. Otherwise, it starts to get silly. I think at the time there was an organisation, there was Alternative Arts used to run the outside pitch, and you got the office used to run the inside one. So there was a final level. If it all got a bit too much, someone would come in and go, right, well, this is what this is.
And was that helpful?
Yeah, I suppose it must have been, but I'm sure I didn't appreciate it at the time.
Yeah, completely. Well,
you always feel like you're a bit of a victim. Yeah.
Well, also as well, I mean, this is the thing. We tend to find a lot of us streeties people who work the streets tend to be rebellious in some way.
There's a reason for that, yeah.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on that?
I totally agree with you. There is a reason why we're out in the street, because we're not capable of working with other people too closely. It's much nicer and easier to do your own thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
but
well,
because of that, it can make us, well, we're characters, and because of that, we can be problematic at times, I think.
Yeah. Would you, if you had to start again, would you still start on the street? Would you still have the life you had?
No, I do that.
I mean, we've been on for an hour and 40 minutes now, so I'm going to try and get it to 2 hours.
Okay.
Not that I don't talk to you more, because you're lovely to speak to, but I'm just tying in a knot now, you know?
Yes, I would. 2 reasons. One, it's a great place to go and learn your trade. Where else can you go and you know, start bad and learn how to be good? And secondly, where else is there now? Where else can you actually learn your trade? I don't know where there is. I'm also quite worried that street performing will stop. I'd like your thoughts on this, actually, because once we go cashless, where do you go?
Well, I was talking with a gentleman called Gino DeVille. I don't know if you know.
He's a mate of mine. He was security guard back at Covent Garden on the indoor market first. Gino, lovely man.
Yeah, well, I met him the first time, chatting with him about doing interviews about different stuff. He's in China now.
Yeah, and, I talk to him quite regularly.
Yeah, and he talked to me about the QR code they have there. So there they have a little barcode kind of thing. I know you know what it is, but just for the sake of it. It's a little square that looks like a barcode. It's called a QR code. And you scan that code. And when you scan that code, it automatically sends what you want to send to the bank account.
Oh, fabulous. I have no idea about that.
Yeah, so there's that. A lot of the buskers at the moment on the street are using Zoopla. Oh. You know Zoopla?
Yeah.
Yes, everyone's developing their lives.
I have no idea what Zoopla is.
Good on you for trying to make my life easy. Yeah. So Zoopla, it's a chip and pin system.
Yeah.
So you can put in £5 and it's linked to your bank account, and someone comes up and they put their card on it and it puts £5 in your bank account from them. So you can tell now over the last 5 years, you can see people slowly developing material for
around
using
that.
These materials.
Yeah.
Yes. And so that's where I see it going. I don't think the street will die.
Thank God.
Yeah, hopefully not. I think even if we come to no cash and no one's got anything whatsoever, I think people will still do shows and they'll say, put me up for the night, buy me a dinner or whatever. There'll be different ways. The reason a lot of us went on the street is because we couldn't function in normal society as easily as others. Those people aren't going to disappear. They're still going to be here.
Yeah.
The grift will go on.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the biggest change when I was busking was the pound coin. That ages me, doesn't it? We went from notes to a coin, because you give away a coin so much easier than a note. And that changed people's hats overnight.
I'll explain this thing, because I'd say I was born in 84. This stuff is before my, my ability
pound coin that came out, and it was overnight change. And then you took pound coin.
Pound notes before.
You wouldn't get many because, probably because I was shit at the time, but also you don't give away a note so easily, do you? It's more of a commitment. It's more.
The contemporary busking thing now is to push for notes.
Yeah.
You aim to get paid in paper, and that's really what you push for. And all the biggest guys who are doing, 4-figure hats and things like that, they're doing them. I mean, it's insane. Some people. They're doing them specifically pushing for your higher end paper notes, and that's really become the craft for that. But then that wouldn't surprise me, because if you talk about people asking for £5 in the early 90s, if people are asking for £5 now, imagine the buying difference between the two.
Yeah, it's a big difference. But it used to be lovely. Yeah. We'd always count our money on the top of the toilets at Covent Garden. We'd go up there and you'd have your hat, and there's still no feeling like it. You tip it up and you check for the gold. You just look for the gold in there, and you'd always try and guess how much was in it, and you'd pile all your gold bits up.
Did you ever turn? And this is something that I did when I was beginning, and it's something I do a lot less now. I have less need to now, but I also do it a lot less now because I've got more savvy on it, I believe. Did you ever turn your audience in a bad hat? Did you ever say, "Oh, you know, whatever fucking line there is at the end"? Don't give me copies. I can't spell. So you know, somebody's done a show, and the show's gone okay, and they've held the hat out, and not half the amount of people they would expect or desire have come to put money in the hat, and so they begin to pump viscera. Yeah, pump viscera at the audience.
No, never. Not my style. Not my thing. Never.
And why so? Is there a belief to that, or is it just because you know you're a nice guy and that wouldn't come into your
I just don't like it. I wouldn't like to see it. I wouldn't like to do it. It's just not my thing. I would go away and think why, because no matter how bad you show, there's always maybe something you could have done that could have made it better. I would go away and think why, what did I do wrong? How can I make more of it? I would never start insulting them or something. I have done, and I would do, is the insulting them if they left, that whole thing about like him over there running off without paying, trying to sort of make everyone else scared to leave. Of course, that's the standard.
Is that the thing of the external? You pick on the external to solidify the group.
Yeah, I've got really strong memories of watching the Vicious Boys from years back do the show. They were sort of, when I very first got there, one of the biggest groups, and people were afraid to leave their crowd, genuinely afraid. And the control they had, they just had such control, and the fact that they had squeaky hammers and they were bipping people on the head that left also probably helped.
So I was going to say, were they vicious? But with squeaky hammers, you can imagine that it's kind of as vicious as.
Funnily enough, they weren't. The Vicious Boys was Andy and Angelo, and they did mime of famous films. So they get a pretend video and they put it in and they play, and then they do like what's now a standard bit probably for mimes, which was the Chariots of Fire chase thing, where the one guy's in slow motion, come behind, grab him around the thing, pull him back, and the slow motion fight over who comes through first. But they had a bunch of really good sketches built around a whole bunch of popular films at the time. But they also had squeaky hammers to hit you on the head if you left the audience, which was...
Did you think, well, this whole subject of people leaving and not leaving makes me think of psychology. Was there personally a thing you were thinking about psychology? And after that, was there a broad acknowledgement of being psychology in the craft at the times you were developing?
No, not that I saw or heard. You just kind of took it all in, and it sort of just went into your head, and you realized what and why. But I never remember sitting there thinking, this is psychology, this. It was just...
Do you now?
Yeah, but I still don't want to examine it too deeply, because I think it's like looking at a joke and the psychology of a joke. Sometimes it's just a joke. Relax, enjoy it. If once you start analysing it and what makes it work, you kind of take the funny out, I think.
Yeah, I think there's something that I'm trying to remember his name now. Jimmy Carter's. He says, dissecting a joke is like dissecting a frog. You may learn how it works, but no one has fun.
Particularly the frog, probably.
Yes.
But yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I mean...
So if you had advice to give to... sorry, would you like to finish?
No, go on. No, we're cool.
If you had advice to give to younger performers who are beginning, who want to make the journey you did, not just the street, but the whole spectrum of journey, as I said, from the pavement to the pavilion, what advice would you give them?
I would say use the street to learn your craft, and don't move before you're ready to move. The last thing you want to do is jump too soon and get pushed back, because to come back in after that is much, much more difficult. Wait till you're sure you're going to hit, and then come in.
How can you be sure?
Well, you can only be as sure as you can. It's like you can watch everyone else and think, I can swing with these guys. I'm at a level now where I can make this work. One of the classic things I've seen from street performers that didn't think it through. The first probably 10-15 minutes even of a street show is not show, it's crowd building, it's walking around, it's wow, it's doing stuff, it's business, it's getting the people to come. So when you go on a stage, they're there, and it's realizing that is your first big thing, that you don't have to do any of that. You've got to get on with your show. You've got to be you. You've got to be your show. You can't start trying to do business. Oh, the other thing is the walking. You're constantly like, "Drrr, drrr," because that's what you do. You've got to bang the drum. You've got to get everyone involved in what you're doing. And when it's just you and everyone's looking at you, you don't have to do that at all. It's weird if you see it.
Yeah. Very interesting.
The other things I would say, yeah, is watch everyone who's doing that. Look at what they've got. Look at what you can work with. Look how much space you've got, and plan accordingly. It's quite interesting. If you look back through the years of particularly speciality acts, you'll find a lot of, you see all these big props and guys with like cannons on their heads and whatever. There's a reason for that. They weren't working the comedy clubs. A lot of the prop-driven stuff is driven by the venues that you can work in. If you're going into the clubs, you've got to realize you can't do the big high stuff with the Diablo or whatever. You have to plan accordingly. You can go back to that when you get to a theatre stage or a ship or whatever.
And I suppose the last thing is it's success. And we haven't talked about this too much, but we've talked about it inadvertently, but success is not, I imagine, just the show. It's not just being able to perform well, because God knows I've seen some amazing performers who don't have a pot to piss in. So there's something else to it. And you probably are quite well positioned, I'd imagine, to, you know what I'm getting at. Yeah,
I'm genuinely a very happy bunny. I'm doing what I love doing. I've got a nice house. I have a nice life brought to me by what I do, and I'm very, very lucky and very appreciative.
But what I mean by this is your gigs, a lot of them are because you're good, but it's also because you've managed to communicate with people. You've managed to convince people to give you an opportunity. And there's something to that, surely.
Well, it's all about relationships. When it comes to work itself, is you have to forge relationships. I know we've all got the internet and this, that, and the other now, but I would still say 90% at least of my work is through people that know me. I've worked with before, they put me again, they've put me in here, that worked, it's all really nice. If you're not an arse and you treat people nicely and you do your job, you'll come back, they'll use you for something else. It's knowing all the people that you need to know to make that happen and forging those links with people. For whatever the internet will do for you, it won't do that. You need to meet people personally and be seen by them. And it's how you get yourself in front of them.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, so we've been talking now for 1 hour 50. I've had a wonderful time chatting with you.
Well, likewise, it's been lovely.
Really has, genuinely, Steve. Is there anything else you want to add? Anything else you'd like to talk about that we haven't touched on?
Not really. I mean, I'm open to chat about whatever, but it's especially from the street. They were hard days, but they were great, and I loved them, and I'm so glad I did them, and I'm so glad I met all the performers that I met doing there. Yeah, it was when you do your first winter. And all of a sudden you're getting respect for going through the winter when you never got it before. You become a street performer as opposed to someone who's just bowled down because it's summer and it's nice. I remember, Christ, there was about 13 of us doing a horribly cold February day, and it was probably Paddy and John from the Cool Shades, Eddie Izzard, Dave Benson Phillips, possibly John Lenihan, all sort of successful acts, all doing our thing, but we used to hang out in the shop across from the thing with a cup of coffee or tea or whatever, just to stay warm enough to come out and do the shows. And then we all formed an audience for each other. So I did my show and they all clapped for me to try and get a few people in, and then we'd swap round and they'd have a go. that kind of feeling where everyone supports everyone. And the fact that I had to work to no one, that has stood me in really good stead. I know you shouldn't have to work to nobody, but sometimes you go out and there's like, it's like the inside of a Kipling's pie in the theatre. You've got a person over there, and like a couple of little bits. And if you haven't had the experience of working a cold day in Covent Garden when there's no bugger around, and you start your show to nothing and hope to build something, that experience can really save your bacon, because it doesn't phase you. Nothing phases you then. No,
it's where I found I wrote a lot of my best material, is when you spent 20 minutes without anybody watching you. And there's almost a liberation from that, you know?
Yeah.
You can just say what you want.
Well, yeah. And you really do find out what works then.
Yeah.
What's your...
Steve? Carry on.
No, I'm good. We're all good.
Steve, so I was going to say, we're reaching the last couple of minutes. I'd just like to say, Steve, thank you. You know,
absolute pleasure. Thanks for having us. Can't wait to watch Haggis and your other men.
Yeah. Well, Haggis will be very good. Haggis on Wednesday at 5. And we have a guy called Julio Clown, who is, I think it'd be quite interesting, breakdancer, who has at some points breakdancing troops all working all over the world. He's become a kind of businessman in the way he does it. So it'll be interesting from that different perspective.
I'd love to hear it, because when I first started at the Garden, there was Ozzy's crew. And in those days, they literally would put out the boombox and they'd stand around smoking for 20 minutes and pushing each other and giggling and have a crowd the size of the piazza. And over time, as people saw, it's a bit like, again, about like the comedy circuit, because it was such a new thing, everyone wanted to see it. But over time, people had seen it. And so the group got tighter and tighter until everything was bam, 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 and they were brilliant. And then I think, and then it became tighter, and then it became the group, and then the group split off because Ozzy or Shandy or Melvin all could make more money on their own. But from that start, all these different things happened, and it became tighter, and then something else.
Well, we have Shandy coming up in the following weeks. I'm looking forward to chatting to Shandy. I'm desperately trying to get Melvin Plummer. I'm trying to get him on the interview.
Melvin's a good lad, yeah.
Melvin, I don't know if you know.
To Melvin, actually.
He's a great guy. He's basically churning out catchphrases for the London busking community. So take a year off. If you walk onto the queue, he'll be there and he'll look up at you. And we're really good buddies. And he'll look up at me and go, "Oh, why don't you take a year off?"
He did quite a while with Bebop. When Ozzy's group split into different groups, him and a guy called Bebop did a double for quite some time.
God, what was Melvin like back? I mean, we digress a little bit, but I'm interested. What was Melvin like back in the day? Because now he's a very powerful show. He's incredibly funny, but he's your kind of perfect example of someone who's been busking too long. He hates it. He hates the audience.
That's a shame.
You know,
he was
dream killers, player haters.
He was an extremely talented body popper. I didn't know him that well because they were a group and they hung out and did their thing, but they were all really friendly. Melvin was a lovely guy and he was very, very good. I remember him constantly practicing his head spins down by the portico there.
Yeah, I've heard stories. He was incredible.
Yeah, he was and still is, I'm sure. You don't lose that kind of skill.
No.
But he wasn't doing gags at the time. There were little bits of funny popping or whatever, but there was never a verbal jokey bit at all. It was all
that's his strength now. You know, he's an old man now, so all he's got is his talking. He's pretty good at it. He's one of the funniest fuckers you're watching the street.
Is he really? I'd have to say that.
He's so funny. I mean, he's funny, but he's funny from way like he'll turn around and there'll be a lady giving some shit to him. Go, "Shut up, you bitch!" And all of you dream killers, you player haters, you don't know. Yeah, pick on the black man, why don't you? And like as performers, we love it because you're watching a guy he's going full suicide bomber. He's taking himself and the crowd out with him. And as I said, as a community now, we have his sayings. His sayings are things that everyone says to each other. People walk up on the pitch and he's not there and they say, "Why don't you take a day off?" He's know, he's had his cultural influence now in our group. There's no question on that.
Well, he's earned it. He's certainly earned it.
Well, time spent, mate. Time spent. So when this all ends, are you going to be going back performing?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Just when.
You going to be back in the cruises?
Yeah.
Yes,
I'll be back out working in Germany or abroad. I got a gig in France in October at the moment that hopefully will still come off. But if it doesn't, hey ho, I'm not expecting it to happen. So it'd be a bonus if it does. I think if I'm
personally on the
at luckiest, I'll be doing a Christmas show in Germany or something like that, circus, and then hopefully vaccine comes along and we're all back in business. But yeah, back to work as usual.
Cool. So I'm trying to be a bit tighter. I'm trying to make sure that our interviews are 2 hours because I'm going on like Rumpold and needed 6 hours and various other bit of times.
Well, it kind of had to with Rumpold, didn't it?
Well, you know, at the start of the interview, I thought, okay, I'm going to keep this really tight. I'm going to be really on it. And then I started chatting to Jolly, and I just quickly realised, Jolly, you're going to talk about what you want to talk about at the pace you want to talk about it. I'm along for the ride here.
Yeah.
And so I just went on that journey, and it was an interesting, fun journey. He's an interesting guy.
He's a very interesting guy. He's a nice guy.
Yes. Yeah, very much so. Very much so. To be honest, everybody I've had on so far has been nice. I don't think there's anybody I've had on who I wouldn't happily sit in the bar and have many a drink.
Fabulous. Well, we're a nice bunch. Oh,
yeah, we are. That's you. I'm very happy.
I'm going to cut that off and get back to it. Hang on.
Not me.
No, it's not me. Well, it was. Everyone away.
So it's been lovely. It's lovely chatting with you. It's lovely chatting with everyone. It's lovely to slowly create a history. And you've really made a good chunk into that. Thank you.
I appreciate you doing it. I think it's really nice, and I've loved watching all the people before. So here's to the next one.
You know, cheers.
Here's to the next generation. Here's to the next generation of buskers. Good luck to you, and all the people that I knew from before, and hope to see you around soon.
Cool. So everybody, thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for watching. This is Whining On. That was Steve Rawlings. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye. 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 Goodbye.